Okay, so hope you're all well, and today we are going to talk about the 5 steps to the perfect recruitment process. So last week we talked about recruitment from a candidate point of view, and the replay's up on our YouTube channel, and actually we should just have around about now a live Lunchtime Learn page on our website, so you can find the past replays either on the website, so www.mypeopleclub.com, or by going to our YouTube channel and searching for My People Club and subscribing there. So most of you know us by now if you're a regular on these Lunchtime Learns, but for anyone that doesn't or hasn't come across us before, then we're Christina and James, and we are the co-founders of My People Club. My People Club was born out of a love of helping people and wanting to make your life easier. So there's loads of resources, masterclasses, tools, and loads of other stuff on the website. So I won't go into much detail today because a lot of you have heard it all before, but there's so much stuff on the website that you guys can have a little look at. So inside the platform, you will find a huge resource center full of HR tools, coaching tools, training tools, things like icebreakers, case studies, development tools that you can use, masterclasses, mentoring scheme, business directory, and also loads of member discounts. There's loads of really nice bars and restaurants, which unfortunately are closed at the moment, but we have got some really nice brands on board ready for when we do get going again. And there's also loads of other corporate businesses, so we've got discounts off things like recruitment systems, HR systems, and lots more. So today we're going to look at planning a recruitment process. We're going to look at job descriptions and person specs. We're going to look at advertising. We're going to look at the interview process itself, and then we're going to look at the outcomes. So let's get going. So step 1, planning. So when you're doing a recruitment process, it's really important to plan out the process. So, you know, and especially if you work in a big company where, you know, heads of have their own budgets and they, you know, recruit and manage their own staff as well, it's really important to have a really clear process that everybody knows, that everybody abides by, everybody knows, you know, whether they're supposed to fill in recruitment forms, all that sort of stuff. So as you can see on the left-hand side, there's just a snapshot of a flow chart that we've got within the My People Club member site. And again, it just takes you through every little step that you need to be able to recruit, fulfill a recruitment process properly. So you need to have a clear process. And I've seen it particularly in bigger companies where different managers will do it different ways, and it just gets really confusing. And then it, you know, it starts to cause frictions between different managers. So it's really, really beneficial if you have a really clear process in place. Another thing people forget to do is actually assess the vacancy. So when somebody leaves, it's, you know, human instinct just to replace that role and think, right, that person's left, I need somebody to replace that role. But actually, over time, different roles change. So do you still need that role? You know, can that work actually be redistributed between the people that left? You know, perhaps they, you know, not at capacity and could take on a little bit more work. So you could save yourself the money for that role. Or actually, over time, is that role almost redundant? You know, do you actually need to replace that role? So that's a really key part of the pre-recruitment phase, assessing the role. Do you really need it? And actually, if you're in HR, then challenging the managers to think about that, because you'll tend to find that a lot of managers are like, oh no, you know, I need to have that many people. They get quite precious over it, and actually sometimes you just need to challenge that and, you know, make them justify why they might need that person. The other thing is to complete a recruitment authorization form, and again we've got sort of templates for all this sort of stuff on the My People Club site. And the benefit of having one of these forms is often, you know, a manager will just say to the recruiters or the HR team or whoever looks after recruitment, you know, just go and recruit another person. But actually, have they had authorization? Because I've definitely seen it where people have asked, like my teams in the past, to recruit and they haven't actually got the budget for it. And then, you know, you're halfway through the recruitment process when a more senior manager or director comes in and goes, well, hang on a minute, I haven't got the budget for this. So, you know, let's just stop the process. And then everybody's just wasted a lot of time, often money as well, if you've paid for advertising. And make sure that you have such a form or something similar, or some sort of process that means that everybody is aware of what the budgets are, that role has been authorised, that there is the budget for that role. And again, it just saves a lot of hassle further down the line. So that's the very first bit that you should look at. The next bit, and again, before you should start advertising. So again, a lot of people fall foul of this and try and do this later on down the line. But you know, if you're going to be super organised about it, the best way to do it is do your recruitment process and your RAF forms. So you know that there is the need for the job, and you know that it's all been budgeted and there's money there for it. The next stage, preferably before you advertise, is to make sure you've got an up-to-date copy of the job description and the person spec. So this will help you put an advert together. It also means that before the hiring manager has put the job forward to the recruiters, that they have thought about it, they've made sure everything is up to date, they know what the role is and you know what they want to achieve from that role because they've updated the JD and the person spec. So make sure they're all up to date, make sure they're fit for purpose, because like I just said, you know, roles change over time. So something that was, you know, relevant in 2015, it might not be so relevant now. You know, the times come on quite a bit, don't they? So make sure that you do check these regularly. I know it's definitely one of the more boring tasks if you're in HR, but it's something that does need to be done. And again, we've got templates for job descriptions, person specs, all that sort of stuff on the MyPeopleClub platform. So they're not a task list. And again, I've seen it where I've almost seen two opposite ends of the spectrum, actually. I've seen businesses that have literally maybe like a quarter of a page of job description, and then I've literally seen where there's been pages and pages and pages, and it's almost like, you know, for an admin assistant, every single little task is written out. And that's quite a dangerous thing to do, actually, because if everything is written out, then inevitably you get that one awkward person that says, you know, that's not on my job description, I'm not doing that, you know, it's not listed, even though the millions of other things are. So I tend to try and shy away from that. Generally, I'm just trying to think, a couple of pages tops is probably enough for a job description. And again, try not to make it just a task list. Try and make it for things they are accountable for, they are responsible for. I would also always include things like and any other reasonable task that your manager may ask of you, just to cover that, you know, it's not in my job description. Well, actually, you know, that line basically covers that. So anything that you're asked to do that's reasonable and, you know, obviously within the boundaries of employment law. So make sure that you include all those things on a job description. Person specs is more about the knowledge and skills and behaviour. So again, you know, it's a really important part. So JDs is generally about the responsibilities, accountabilities, and then person specs is the kind of knowledge skills that you're looking for. And again, it forms a really important part. So again, it only needs to be a one-pager. We've got some samples on the website, but such an important part as well, because, you know, are you looking for somebody that's new and upcoming, or are you looking for somebody a bit more senior and that's going to bring all those skills because actually you haven't got time to babysit and you just need someone that can hit the ground running? Now, obviously, salary would be a reflection of that as well, but then also your person spec in particular and your JD will also be a reflection of that. Make sure that when job descriptions, person specs are updated, that they are signed off by the manager, so they're happy with any updates, and then obviously the HR department and anyone else that's relevant. Obviously, every company will have their own processes, so make sure that you're working towards those policies and procedures. And then I always have a sign off on my job description. So when a person starts, or it might be in part of the welcome pack that you send off to the person before that they start, but make sure that they sign the job description and person specs to confirm that they've read it and they know what's in there. So they should have a copy for themselves, and they should have a copy that's returned to the company so that it's on file, that they've read it, they've signed it, they've understood it. And again, if you run into performance problems later down the line, then that's something you can use and refer to say, you know, look, this is on your job description, you've signed it to say that you understood it, and yet you're not doing it. So what are the reasons for that? And then you can have that conversation from there. So the next step, step 3, is all about advertising. Now, advertising, it can be a bit of a minefield, so we'll just have a look at some of the things that you'll need to think about. So you've done your pre-recruitment stuff. So you've done your process, you've done your authorization forms, you've looked at the job spec and the person spec, everything's up to date. So the next step's advertising. So when you think about advertising, it can be quite expensive to advertise now. So it's worth really thinking about, you know, is it a specialist role? So, and if it is, then is there a specific place to advertise? So, you know, if you're looking for a HR person, you might want to advertise in HR groups, on HR platforms, on, you know, in HR magazines. If it's in catering, then I know there's catering magazines and things like that. So, you know, you think about the role, what sector it's in, and if there are particular places to advertise. You can also do things like, you know, packages across the jobs board. So you can put, I'm just trying to think of the last time I advertised, I think it was about £300-ish to advertise across 5 of the jobs boards, which includes things like Total Jobs. And it's worth shopping around because different places will have different deals for that. Then check the wording of the adverts before they do go out. So it's really quite important that you check the wording. So things like, you know, if you need a bar person, you know, you can't ask for a barmaid anymore, it's seen as discriminatory. So you need to make sure that the wording, you know, is appropriate, that you're not going to fall foul of discrimination. So if you look at things like protected characteristics, there's like 9 or so protected characteristics, including age, you know, sex discrimination, sexual orientation, and many more. So again, you need to make sure that your adverts are not sort of crossing any of those lines or going to be seen as discriminatory, you know, that you particularly want a man or a woman or somebody of a certain age, or, you know, somebody young rather than somebody old, you know, all that sort of stuff. So you need to be really, really careful about the wording of your adverts. And again, you know, we've got a recruitment guide that's about 30 pages long on the platform to help you through working through that. Then you need to tell the candidate the next step. So quite often, I find it really useful in an advert to tell people the recruitment process. So it might be like the first stage is will be applications. If you're not successful, then you won't hear back because we get such an influx of applications. So at least then they know if they haven't heard that they haven't been successful. So it's just common decency to tell them the process. It might be that you say the process will be an interview, a telephone interview, followed by a face-to-face interview, followed by an interview or presentation with a senior person if it's like a more senior role. So if you can, try and tell people within the advert, the next steps or the steps of the process. Sometimes, particularly you find with NHS, a lot of NHS stuff, a lot of public sectors, councils, things like that, they will actually put the dates of the interviews into the recruitment packs or the adverts so that people can sort of block those days off because they have really particular days and can't be that flexible. So they will put like dates of interviews in the process as well. So that's something you can consider as well. So step 4, once you've done your advert then and you get to interview stage, excuse me, think about where you're going to hold the interviews. So, you know, if you're in an office setting, for example, in the normal world, you know, is the office away from the rest of the workforce? So it's quiet, it's got aircon, or it's comfortable. If it hasn't, it's not too hot, it's not too cold. Does it have the projector equipment? You know, a lot of people, particularly for senior roles, will get asked to put a presentation together. So, you know, what's the equipment that you need? And, you know, are you expecting candidates to bring their own laptops and stuff, or how are you going to work that? So make sure you've thought about where you're going to hold the interviews. Sometimes, and quite often, I've done some recruitment recently for a company, and we actually did all the recruitment, all the interviews off-site away. Just again, it was more senior role, and we didn't want people sort of peering at everybody who was walking through the door. So we held it in a totally different location and booked out a room elsewhere. Who's going to hold the interview? So I've often seen it where managers have tried to palm it off on HR. So actually they don't even want to recruit for their own staff. They're just like, oh no, HR, you do it. And I would very much push back on that if you're in that sort of situation, because, you know, people should have an interest in who's coming to work for their department and for them. So, you know, they need to make sure that they've got the right skills, that they're going to fit within the team. And actually, the person that knows the job best is the recruiting manager. So I would always push for the person that wants the new recruit to be in the interview. And then maybe it is a HR person or a recruiter if you've got a bigger team and you've actually got set recruiters that are also in the interview. You know, how many interviewers, and again, that'll really depend. You know, I've done it on all sorts of bases. I've done it on my own. I've done it with a couple of people. The last recruitment, because it was a senior role, there was actually a panel of 6 of us that recruited, which seems quite a lot, but everybody had their own skill set on the interview panel. So again, depending on the seniority of the role and depending on, you know, what sector it is and, you know, what the role is, then, you know, you need to make those decisions. I would always suggest that at least 2 people, because then somebody can be asking the questions and somebody can be making notes. It is really difficult to do it on your own when you're asking questions and then you're trying to write down notes and stuff as well at the same time, and you kind of lose that eye contact and a bit of the connectivity, I think. So where possible, always have at least 2 people, but again, you know, you might have many more than that if it's a senior role and different directors and all the rest of it want to get involved. So you'll just have to make that decision on a case-by-case basis, but ideally at least 2 people. And also then, you know, if you have at least 2 people, if the candidate were to complain for any reason, then at least it's not just word against word. You know, you've got some other people in the room who can verify what happened, so it covers your back a little bit as well. So I would always recommend 2 people at least. And interview preparation. So again, I've seen it where managers just kind of rock up to an interview, no preparation, no questions, and then they kind of wonder later down the line why they didn't get the right person. So again, the more preparation you put into these things beforehand, you know, the better you'll be later down the line. So always make sure you prepare. Get some questions ready. So, and again, we've got examples of that on the site, but you know, just from things like the opening, you know, tell us a bit about yourself, blah, 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 and then relate your questions to the key things that you want. So quite often people will link questions to their values. So if they've got certain values, like, you know, they want high achievers, for example, they might have questions about, you know, can you tell me about a time that you really went above and beyond to achieve something? You know, when was it? What happened? Blah, blah, blah. So again, you're trying to ask questions that are going to give you answers about the things that you want to hear about, and then you can decide from their answers whether it's kind of good enough or not, I guess, in the bluntest of senses. But yeah, so, and then, like you say, it's also really good to have those questions, because then you know you're being consistent with every candidate. So if you've got like 6 candidates to see, if you're just doing it all off the cuff, then it's going to be really hard to be consistent. And then if anyone were to complain about the recruitment process, then, you know, in terms of paper trail, what have you got? You've kind of got a load of notes, hopefully, you know, you took notes, but some people haven't took notes. But yeah, you know, I might have asked him 3 questions on achieving, and I've asked this person something completely different. So, you know, how do you compare them? So again, if you've got a set sheet with set questions, and obviously, you know, from their answers you can ask further questions that are not on the sheet, but at least you've kind of got that structure and that basis to go from. So I would always recommend that you do that and have your set questions with you. So lastly, and again, these sessions are only half-hour sessions, so we kind of whiz through things in a lot of detail, well, in a very high-level detail, and we could go and do a whole session on each of these little steps. So you'll tend to find that we've got like really comprehensive guides in MyPeopleClub and things like that, which will really help you. So, and also, if you need any extra help, just get in touch and we'll see what we can do. So in terms of wrap-up and the outcomes, once you've done your interview process, make sure that you kind of follow the whole process all the way to the end, and make sure that the candidate, whether they're successful or not, have a good end of process experience. So sometimes when people have been for an interview, you know, if they're not successful, they tend to get a little bit forgotten about. So, you know, you might not get back to them, or I've had it in the past where, you know, if they've come through an agency, they've ended up phoning up direct because the agency hasn't come back to them. Now, hopefully most agencies are a little bit better than that, but there is the odd bad one. So make sure that, you know, that everybody gets a response, especially if they've taken the time to come to an interview. You know, it's the least we can do. So make sure that, you know, whether it's emailed or phoned, that they get told that they're not successful. Give feedback where appropriate. So, you know, particularly in times like this, a lot of people have lost their jobs, you know, and if they're not very good in interview, then it's really, really helpful to them to give them a little bit of feedback. So again, you know, the recent recruitment I was doing, it was for a senior role, and the interviews were already about an hour and a half long because they had to do presentations and stuff. But we were literally one lady, you know, in there for like over 2 hours because they just completely went off the point and talked. And again, we gave her that feedback in the sort of summary when we fed back to her, because actually everything else was actually really good, but she was a talker, and but anyway, for reasons she wasn't successful. But you know, if she could hone or practice that little bit, then she could actually nail the next interview that she goes to. So it really helps other people. So where it's appropriate, try and go the extra mile, try and give a little bit of feedback. And then the final process for the people that are successful is make sure that you then follow through and do all your offer letters. Again, now everybody has to go through the Good Working Plan and the new laws that came out on April 1st. Everybody's got to have a contract on day one, so make sure that you either send that out beforehand as part of a recruitment or offer letter pack, or you do that on the first day. Make sure you do your reference checks, your right to work checks. So there's a process to be followed also if the candidate is successful. So that's a very, very quick overview of what a process should look like from a recruiter's point of view. You know, get in touch with us if you think there's other things as well, and let us know. Obviously, we could have talked in a lot more detail about, you know, and also things like, you know, the type of person you want, whether it's a contractor, agency person, apprentice, all that sort of stuff. And we've got some really, really comprehensive guides that go through all of this in more detail. For anybody that is not seen this before, then we've also got a mini coaching course that's just been released called Thriving in Challenging Times. It is available to buy on our shop, which is www.mypeopleclub.com/shop. £27, and you get 5 really easy to follow video modules. You get a really big workbook with loads and loads of exercises to do in. And these exercises are not just for challenging times like now. They can be used throughout your life, so it's something that you can come back to and watch again and again. And I would always recommend when you do these like sort of online courses that you always, whether it's ours or anybody else's, always do them at least a couple of times, because you always find different things that you never really picked up on the first time round. So it's a useful tip for any courses that you do. So that's available on our website right now. And if you want to get in touch with us, you can get in touch via email, you can get in touch via the website, you can get in touch also by Facebook groups as well, and you can join today by going to that URL. So I hope you've enjoyed today's session. We're just about bang on time, so thank you very much for joining us. The replay will be up later on our website, on our new Lunchtime Learn page, and it will also be available in the group and on our YouTube channel. So thank you very much for joining us today. I really hope that was helpful, and we look forward to seeing you next week.